Noon Eastern, right here on ESPN and the app. We'll have the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame class of 2020. That announcement show hosted by Reese Davis, Jay Billis, Paul Pierce, and Rebecca Lobo. Some of this year's star-studded finalists include Tim Duncan, Kevin Garnett, Tamika Catchings, and the one and only Kobe Bryant. Patriots owner Bob Kraft with a Hall of Fame move yesterday, sending his team plane to China to bring back over 1 million masks to help doctors and responders on the front line of the coronavirus in Massachusetts. On that note, it is an honor to bring in the Hall of Famer Warren Moon. Warren, thank you so much for being with us.
Hey, Molly, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it, and I hope everybody's out there staying safe and following all the directions from the CDC, and everybody's healthy at home.
Yes, for sure. I appreciate that. And before we get started, Warren, for those that don't know at home, I just want to remind people of your story. 6 years in the CFL in Canada, you had to prove that you could play the quarterback position, and then you had a 16-year NFL career, became a Hall of Famer. It's a remarkable story. You're a trailblazer, and it's all respect. But I want to get to the latest news now here in the NFL. So here's what the NFL's top medical officer, Dr. Alan Still, says, that certain conditions must be met for the NFL season to be able to start this year, including widespread testing and the removal of gathering restrictions. And then yesterday, we had Dez Bryant, we saw Dak Prescott, and 3 others working out together. Where are you on the fact that some of these players are continuing to work out in groups during these circumstances?
You know, it's definitely a risk for players to get together and do that, but it all depends on how they're handling the rest of their lives. If they're at home and if they're being isolated and making sure they're staying away from other people, and the only time that those groups of people are together is when they're together, then maybe it's not as big a risk. But you definitely are taking a risk because you never know who somebody else might have been associated with, and they could have picked up the virus. So, yeah, it's a risk for these players to do that. I understand why they want to do it, because they're trying to work at their craft. But as long as they're staying very, very careful in what they're doing and how they get together, that's something they're going to continue to do. And it's happening all over the league. It's not just that group of guys you saw.
Warren Moon, Stephen A. here. Thank you so much for being on the show. What would you suggest, ideally, players can and should do in order to keep themselves in peak condition in order to be ready for a potential NFL season? Because by all indications, if you're listening to the NFL, we're going to have one.
Yeah, there's some players that have the opportunity to have gyms. Like when I was playing, I had a gym in my home. I had a kind of an acreage, so I could use my whole property to run around if I needed to, and have a trainer come and work me out. But every player doesn't have that type of accessibility. So I think the best thing they can do is when they do get together with a trainer or whatever, try and limit the number of guys that are there. They try and say that you shouldn't have any more than 6 people together at one time. If you can do something like that and still get your workouts in, still try and practice the social distancing even when you're together as a group working out, I think you're making it less risky to do it.
Warren, Max Kellerman, great to have you on the show. Always great to talk to you. We see today Singapore, which was held as a model for their response to the coronavirus early on, now has to reshut everything and go to social distancing again, indicating that until there's a vaccine or at least abundant testing where we can isolate people who have the infection instead of just everyone social distancing, that this could come in waves. In other words, even if things resume in over the summer or something like that, you could have another wave of social distancing in the fall or in the winter. Given that circumstance, do you think we see NFL play if they had to move it back in the calendar? It seems to me the one league that no one else wants to compete with that could kind of decide, yep, we'll just push back the schedule, let everyone else worry about it. But if there's a second or a third wave of social distancing, do you see the NFL season going on, or do you think we just lose it?
You know, Max, there's just so many uncertainties right now. We're dealing in uncharted waters, and this virus is something that It doesn't have any favorites. It goes after any and every one all over the world. So we're going to have to go off of what the medical experts say and how much this disease is progressing. Are we getting it under control? All those different things, and we won't know that until time goes by. We're still kind of in the infancy stages of the disease here in this country. We've only been dealing with it now for maybe about a month or so. So I think it's going to take a little bit more time before we see, as the testing gets going, how much we're getting it under control and how well we'll be able to plan for the future. But I think all these businesses, all these multi-billion-dollar businesses, they have to plan as if things are going to go on. Now, if things change within that time, then you have to make changes and adjust. But there's no question they want to go ahead and plan like they're going to maybe play a season this year based off of what they know now.
Warren, and say that is the case and things go on as planned. I want to get your take on a football decision here by the Dallas Cowboys to essentially not take care of Dak Prescott. They gave Amari Cooper a long-term deal. They gave Dak the exclusive franchise tag. What are your thoughts on that?
It's really been interesting, this whole Dak Prescott contract thing, as you listen to it, throughout the whole season last year, all throughout this off season. You would think that one position on your team, you would try and get that solidified as quickly as possible. But I think it all comes down to negotiating, and I'm sure the Cowboys have a number of years and a number of guarantees that they want to see happen, and I'm sure Dak and his representatives have their number, and they just haven't gotten close to that yet. But I think it is closer than what we think, but it still hasn't gotten done. So we're talking about a lot of money here, and I'm sure Dak's representatives want to make sure he stays in line with some of the other guys who are probably going to sign here in the next year or so, if not beforehand, whether it's Patrick Mahomes or whether it's Lamar Jackson. With the salary cap going up, they want to make sure Dak's contract stays in line with those guys. They don't want to lowball him right now. So I'm sure that's the problem. And then Jerry wants to make sure he doesn't guarantee too much money for the future. So this is all negotiating. It's definitely taken longer than it should for a quarterback in their football team, especially a guy who's done as much as he has for their team. But hopefully it gets done before that July deadline.
I totally follow you, Warren, when you're talking about just the business aspects of it all. But from a football perspective, considering the fact that a running back has been paid, offensive linemen have been paid, linebackers have been paid, wide receiver has been paid, but your quarterback is the last in line, knowing football the way that you do and all the intricacies that involve it. What are your thoughts about the fact that the quarterback seems to be the last dude at the table being fed, per se? Is that a good thing for a football team to do?
No, I don't think so, Steve. That was what I led off my comments with. It's really a surprise to me that the most important position on your team you haven't taken care of yet, but that seems to be the fact. And I think when you talk about those other guys that have signed, whether it's a wide receiver, whether it's the running back and Zeke, those guys were first-round draft picks, and I think that kind of adds to this, where Dak was a fourth-round draft pick, and sometimes that plays into the minds of organizations too as well, and you don't really get the respect that you probably deserve because of where you were drafted. So I'm not sure how much that plays into it, but there's no question that if he was a first-round draft pick and if he had done the things that he's done over the first 4 years of his career, this contract would have been done by now.
Warren, I made a prediction, famously at this point, of Tom Brady falling off a cliff, as I've since amended it to more like a ravine. He's been, down year over year the last couple seasons, but here he is with another starting job. And the reason I did that was because no elite quarterback had ever performed still as an elite quarterback, except for Warren Moon for a year, past a certain age, as the guy who, in fact, was the exception that proved the rule, because you went to the Pro Bowl. What were you, 41, 42 that year? What do you see as Tom Brady's outlook for this upcoming season, and how much longer do you think he could go?
Well, as you get older, there are certain things that kind of take their toll on your body physically. You don't bounce back as fast if you have a very physical game or whatever. But I think Tom takes very excellent care of himself. He's not a guy that gets beat up a lot because he gets rid of the football. He doesn't hold it a long time. And I think as you get older, you need much more talent around you to help you not have to carry the football game yourself. And he's going to have that in Tampa. You know, he's going to have 2 top-flight receivers on the outside. He's got 2 really good tight ends. I'm not sure if their running game is up to speed right now, but if they can improve their running game, they're going to take a lot of pressure off Tom, and Tom will still be able to be Tom, make the great decisions that he makes, create the culture and improve the culture that's already there in Tampa. And they're just going to be a team when it comes down the stretch in games. He's going to help them win those tight football games. So he brings a lot to the table, and I think the thing that's going to really help him is the talent that's around him. All he has to do is get the ball out there. These guys will make plays for him.
Warren, before we
not
let you go,
asking you,
where
I
would
mean,
you
maybe
like to see? Where would you like to see Cam end up?
You know, Cam is a guy at this stage of his career, if he is healthy, he can still start in this league. He's only about 30, 31 years old, so he's still got some really good years left, even though he has been banged up a lot over the last 4 years. But he's not a guy I don't see going somewhere where he can be a backup. He still brings a lot to the table if he's healthy. The thing that concerns me is his personality. He's a big time personality. He brings a lot to the table when he comes to a team. And there's some teams that probably could deal with that, and there are other teams that don't want their leader to be that type of personality. So that's where he's going to find the problem in trying to find another home. But I think the LA Chargers could be a possibility for him because they right now have Tyrod Taylor as their starter, and also maybe the Jacksonville Jaguars because they have Gardner Minshew as their starter, and he's not a solidified starter in this league. So I think there are some opportunities out there for Cam, but he would definitely have to sit down with the organization, and they have to really figure out if his personality and what he brings to the table, and if he's healthy, all those things are going to mesh to make him a starter for one of those football teams.
Mm-hmm. The Hall of Famer Warren Moon. Warren, thank you so much for the time. Be safe.
All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you having me on.
All right. When we come back here on First Take, we're talking the NBA. Which three-peat was the better team, the first or the second? It's Michael Jordan. And don't forget, his doc comes out April 19th exclusively on ESPN. Jay Will be back for that.